In this tutorial, I'm going to be walking you through how to review and conduct a literature review, as well as how to design a research. As the first step, you need to know how to read and analyze a research paper. Reading and analyzing research papers, the process of critically examining scholarly articles to understand their purpose, methods, findings, and the contributions to a field of study. This is not a simple reading of information. This is more like a deep effort that you make for connecting the dots. In other words, this is where you learn and evaluate what the research problem that they have used, the design of the study, the data collection methods and analysis techniques, and the conclusions, which in turn help you judge the quality, relevance, as well as the reliability for your own work. Through the solid foundation backed up by these analyses, it helps a researcher to come up with better informed methodology choices and the ability to develop well-supported research questions and arguments. For an effective understanding of a specific research paper, you can use this IMRAD structure. So it is basically a structure where you can use to analyze and quickly read and understand what the study is all about and how it was conducted, what it was found, and what those findings actually mean. IMRAD is an acronym which stands for Introduction, Methods, Results, and Discussion. Let's quickly jump off to an example so you can understand what this structure actually used for. And this is regarding a research paper that studied the relationship between screen time and sleep quality among high school students. According to the IMRAD's introduction section, the researcher was first able to find that the smartphone and social media use among teenagers has increased rapidly, and previous studies suggest that excessive screen time may reduce sleep quality, but limited research focuses on high school students. So this introduction laid the foundation to study or investigate the relationship between daily screen time and the sleep quality among high school students. Since there was a limited amount of studies, this is an opportunity to construct the research question. So the question is, does increased screen time reduce sleep quality among high school students? As the methods, the researcher was able to find that a quantitative cross-sectional survey was conducted among 120 high school students aged between 15 to 18. A cross-sectional survey is a type of survey conducted at a specific time. For an instance, starting from the 1st of January to 31st January, which happens to be the end of the month, and that defines a 30 days of timeline. According to results, students reported an average screen time of 5.2 hours per day, and a moderate negative correlation was found between screen time and sleep quality, indicating that high screen time is obviously associated with the poor sleep quality. And lastly, the discussion has revealed that the results indicate that increased screen time negatively affects sleep quality, supporting previous research findings. So that was the IMRAD structure for when you can use to effectively understand a research paper. And note-taking strategies also play a crucial role in this process. So basically, it is all about the methods that you can use to record, organize, and understand important information while engaging in learning. This actually helps you remember the key points and improve understanding and make much easier. As the first technique of the method, we can use chronological method. So it is basically a structured note-taking technique that divides pages into 3 sections: cue column, note area, and summary. And the second method is mind mapping. So it is basically a visual note-taking strategy that we use to connect ideas and concepts. And the third one is annotation tools. It allows a researcher to interact directly with the research paper. It's usually done in PDF format. Also, the researchers use reference managers to make it more effective. Let's have a look at this example in the table 5. So as the first note-taking strategy, we have chronological method. As I mentioned before, the notes are divided into cue column, main note section, and summary. For an example, the cue column could be the research gap, and the notes study examines screen time and sleep but lacks longitudinal data. And in the summary, this paper shows negative relationship between screen time and sleep quality but is limited by cross-sectional design. As a conclusion or countermeasure, you can also study a longitudinal design. The next strategy is mind mapping. So it's basically ideas from a research paper that are visually connected to show relationship between concepts, methods, and findings. Here we have an example: the center, screen time, and the sleep, the branches, theory, method, such as the survey, the results, the negative correlation in this context, and the limitations is the self-report and future research. And the last strategy is the annotation tool. So it's basically the digital tool that I use to highlight, comment, and tag important sections, which is when you're connecting the dots. So for an example, let's imagine a highlighted sentence in a PDF, and it shows screen exposure before bedtime disrupts melatonin production. And the next up, we have our main topic, which is literature review. And a literature review is basically a systematic and critical examination of existing works, such as journals, articles, books, conference papers, and maybe it could also be a credible report related to a specific research topic. In research context, it helps a researcher to understand what is already known and how knowledge was evolved and where gaps or unresolved gaps remain. Down here you can see the importance of the literature review. It provides the background knowledge and theoretical context for the study and helps identify research gaps and unanswered questions, prevents duplication of existing research, guides the formulation of research questions and hypotheses, helps select appropriate research methods and tools, also supports the interpretation of research findings, strengthens the academic credibility of the study, and lastly demonstrates the researcher's understanding of the field or the study. There are many search engines and databases where you can find existing research for multidisciplines. For example, Google Scholar is the most widely recognized platform for research papers. And we have constructed this table including all the links and resources that you're gonna need when you're conducting your literature review. So help yourself and go through all the links based on your study. All the links are included in this table. And there are a couple of techniques that you should be familiar with when you're conducting the literature review. And the first one we have is the advanced search strategies. So you can basically use keywords and search terms. For example, if you're looking for a study on social media and mental health, the keywords such as social media, Instagram, mental health, stress, sleep quality would help you. Boolean operators also a advanced keyword searching strategy. So you can basically use these three Boolean operators, and, or, and not. For example, and narrows the results by including all terms. For an example, social media and mental health, and or broadens results by including either term. For an example, teenagers or adolescents. And the not Boolean operator excludes unwanted terms. For an example, not workplace, so it excludes a workplace related to stress. As the second method, phrase searching, it uses quotation marks to ensure that the database search for exact phrases rather than individual words. So for an example, searching for sleep quality, so that is a whole phrase and it retrieves more precise results than searching for sleep with an operator and quality separately. And the third keyword searching method is truncation. So basically, truncation allows searching for different words endings using a symbol such as asterisk. For an example, you search education, but this time you used EDUCAT and the asterisk symbol, and as a result it fetches resources regarding education, educational, educator, and etc. And the fourth keyword searching method is field-specific searches, because many databases allow searching within specific fields such as title, abstract, or author, increasing relevance. For example, you search artificial intelligence in the title field ensures that article focuses primarily on AI. Another main exploration technique is backward and forwarding citation searching. Backward citation searching involves in reviewing the reference list of key articles to find earlier foundational studies of a research paper. But if you go ahead and scroll to the bottom of this PDF, you can also find a reference list, and that is also a backward citation exploration technique, which I encourage you to do. And the forward citation searching is the method that identifies newer studies that have cited a key paper showing how research has evolved. Tools such as Google Scholar and Web of Science are commonly used for this task. So for an example, using Google Scholar's cited by feature to find recent studies building on a classic memory research paper. The third exploration technique is evaluating score credibility. And this is mainly due to not all sources are equally reliable, and evaluating credible is essential, and that is a must when it comes to the exploration of literature reviews. Because your study and your research context is completely dependent on the sources that you explore. And the first one is peer-reviewed and non-peer-reviewed sources. So peer-reviewed articles undergo expert evaluation, and generally they are more reliable than blogs and opinions, which also falls under the category of non-peer-reviewed sources. For an instance, a journal article from Nature is more credible than a personal blog post from a social media influencer or someone like that. And the next one is the impact factor and journal quality. Journals are often ranked into Q1, which is the highest, and Q4, the lowest, based on impact and citation metrics. For example, publishing in a Q1 journal indicates higher academic influence. And the third one is conference papers versus journal articles. So conference papers often present early findings, and the journal articles provide more comprehensive and in detail and validated results. And the best example would be an IEEE conference paper may later be expanded into a full journal article. And the fourth one is predatory journals. So predatory journals charge publication fees without proper peer review. So warning signs include unrealistic review times and unclear editorial boards. For an example, a journal is promising the publication within 48 hours is more likely to be predatory. As the fourth main exploration technique, we can use gray literature. So basically, the idea of gray literature related to the research materials that are not published in traditional journals. For an example, theses, dissertations, or government reports, policy documents, and white papers. This is very useful when it comes to the studies that are emerging, such as technology-related reviews and policy-related issues or journal literature. A literature review matrix is an important tool for the information organization. Just when your exploration flooding with more information, you're gonna have to find a better way to organize this information. So this matrix allows you to capture essential details such as authors, research objectives, methodology that has been used, and main findings, strength, as well as limitation, also the relevance to your own study. And this is a template for literature review matrix we have created, so feel free to make use of this template. You can also make improvements based on your perception and make it even more relevant to your study. You can also use this guide to walk through this template and get your work done. And the chapter 6 is citation management. So you need to know what exactly is a citation. So citation is a formal way of acknowledging and documenting the sources that you have used in your academic writing so that the others can locate, verify, and understand where your information came from and how it fits into your or the large research conversations. So a citation typically includes details such as the author's name, publication date, the title, and the publication information. As you can see here, There's an in-text citation, and it includes the author and the year. So the year happens to be 2018. And this specific in-text citation falls under the APA style. And these are the most common citation styles. First, we have APA style, which I have used in this document. And APA stands for American Psychological Association, and it's basically used in social sciences, psychology-related education, and health. In text, you can see the author's name goes in the brackets, and following the author's name, the publication year. And in the reference list, you can see it's followed by the author's name along with his initials, following the year of publication, and the title of the research paper, and the field it belongs to. So there's basically the journal, and the volume, which is 45, and the number 2, and the pages 123 through 135. And the next citation style is IEEE, which stands for Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers. This citation style is basically used in engineering, technology, and computer science related journals. In passages as in-text citations, you can see a number within square brackets. The third one is Harvard citation style. It is commonly used in humanities, social sciences, and business. It is almost exactly like the APA citation style. And the fourth one is Chicago citation style. This is commonly used in history, arts, some social sciences. Let's talk about the citation management tools. So basically, these are the software applications designed to help researchers collect, organize, and store and format references used in academic writing. These tools allow users to save sources from the databases and manage PDF documents, insert in-text citations while writing, and automatically generate references list in various citation styles, such as the ones that we learned before: APA, IEEE, Harvard, or Chicago. These tools are really helpful because they help you to reduce the manual errors, help you save your time, and academic integrity as well. And these are the commonly used tools for citation management. And here we have created a complete guide to get started with this free citation management tool, which is Zotero. So feel free to use this guide for when you start working on your research. And these are the best practices in writing literature reviews. The very first practice is organization approaches. There are 4 different approaches that you can use, and the first one is thematic approach. In this approach, studies are grouped by common themes, variables, or concepts rather than the author. For example, theme could be screen time and sleep, and this theme basically investigates about variables such as blue light exposure, bedtime usage, and sleep quality. And the second approach is chronological. In this approach, the literature review is arranged by publication year to show how ideas evolved over time. So for an example, early studies between 2010 to 2015 focused on TV use, and later studies between 2018 to 2024 focuses on smartphones and social media. And the third approach is methodological. This approach basically studies are grouped based on research methods used. For an example, surveys analyzed together and experimental sleep hub studies discussed separately. As the fourth approach, theoretical, it involves in organizing the literature around theories and models. For an example, the cognitive law theory versus media displacement theory used to explain sleep disruption. And the second practice is synthesis versus summary. So the poor practice is summary, and the stronger or the good practice is synthesis. Summary involves in listing findings of individual studies without connections, whereas synthesis integrates studies by comparing patterns, contradictions, and gaps. For an example for summary, Smith in 2020 has found screen time reduces sleep, and the same result was achieved in 2021 by Lee. In contrast to summary, the synthesis, it implies that multiple studies, Smith in 2020 and Lee in 2021, report reduced sleep quality with increased screen time, although Lee highlights ages as moderating factor. That's basically a gap identification and the patterns and the contradictions when it comes to the synthesis over the summary. And the third practice is creating narrative flow. As a first approach, the topic sentences. Basically, each paragraph begins with a clear idea guiding the reader. For example, several studies have examined the psychological effects of screen exposure on sleep. And the second approach is the transitions. It refers to the smooth links between paragraphs or themes. For example, while early research focused on television use, recent studies emphasized smartphones. And the third approach is building toward gap. It's all about gradually shows what is known and what remains unknown. For example, however, few studies focus specifically on high school students in developing countries. And the fourth practice is citation styles. As the first approach, APA, and the format is author, date, style, common in social sciences. And the second approach of the citation style is IEEE. It's basically numbered citations common in engineering. And the third citation style or the approach is Harvard. And it's similar to APA like I mentioned before, but a little bit different when it comes to the formattings. And the fourth one is Chicago citation style. So it's all about the notes and the bibliography style common in history. And the fifth and the last best practice is avoiding plagiarism. And the first approach is poor paraphrasing. It only changes few words from the original text. And the original text, for an example, the original text could be screen exposure delays sleep onset. So the poor paraphrasing techniques used in this context was that screen use delays the start of sleep. But in contrast to that, the good paraphrasing technique or the approach shows that the structure and wording changed, but the meaning preserved, and the citations are included. For example, exposure to digital screens before bedtime has been shown to interfere with the body's ability to fall asleep. Within brackets, the author, Smith, and the year of publication, which is 2022. And the third approach is direct quotations. So it's basically used to include a standard definition or key statement. For example, screen exposure suppresses melatonin production. Within brackets, the author, Smith, year 2022, and the page number, which happens to be the 48th page. Alright, we have come to the chapter 7, and the chapter 7 is dedicated for research design fundamentals. A research design is a strategic plan or pretty much like the blueprint for the whole progress. It guides how the study will be conducted to answer specific research questions or the test hypothesis. It defines the overall approach, methods, procedures for collecting and analyzing data in order to ensure that the results are valid, reliable, and relevant to your study. Because without a proper research design, you might start off with a different topic and unexpectedly you might end up with the conclusions or the findings for a topic which is not your first topic in the first place. A solid research design helps researchers to choose the appropriate study type, whether it could be qualitative, quantitative, or both, which happens to be the mixed methods, and select sample, decide on data collection tools, and determine analysis techniques, and etc. Research design and framework development go hand in hand with each other. They basically work together to guide the entire study. In general, research design determines how the study will be conducted and the overall plan for data collection and analysis and the methods, the sample, and the tools used, whereas the framework development, it decides whether the conceptual or the theoretical framework, and it determines what will be studied and the key concepts, variables, and the relationships that the researcher will examine. And this is the conceptual framework. So it is made up of different variables. So it's basically a combination of different variables that guides the entire study. This visual tool helps the researcher to prematurely understand certain factors that influence the outcome and provides a theoretical foundation for the entire study. There are 5 different variables. As the first variable, the independent variable, is the cause or the main factor that you manipulate to see its effect. For an example, UI design in a new app. The second one is the dependent variable or the DV. So that's the outcome you measure to observe the changes caused by the IV, the independent variable. For an example, user retention or task completion speed. And the third variable is mediating variable, and that explains how or why the IV affects the DV. So it's basically the middle step. For an example, in this context, user satisfaction mediating the effect of UI design on retention. And the fourth variable is moderating variable, which influences the strength of the direction of IV and DV relationship. For example, age or tech savviness altering how users respond to UI design. And the fifth one is the control variable. These could be the factors kept constant to prevent them from affecting the dependent variable in order to ensure fair test of the independent variable. So in this context, the example, the same device type or lightning conditions for all the users. And we have an example down below. It's a conceptual framework constructed for screen and sleep quality. So you can see the bedtime habit is the moderating variable, and the independent variable is the screen exposure along with device type. And this framework shows how mediating factors affects the sleep quality, which happens to be the dependent variable of the study. And next up we have the theoretical framework. So theoretical framework is a set of concepts or the theories that guide a study. As the very first theoretical framework on the list, we have cognitive load theory. So the field it belongs to is education and technology. So the key concept is that it explains how the brain processes information. Too much information reduces learning efficiency. In other words, it's about the lack of retention. As a practical application, studying how a multimedia app affects student learning. As the second theoretical framework, we have theory of planned behavior. So the field that it belongs to is the psychology and behavioral studies. So this investigates how a behavior is influenced by attitudes, norms, and the perceived control. As a practical application, investigating factors that affect student adoption of online learning platforms. And the third framework is diffusion of innovations theory. So this theoretical framework is related to sociology and marketing. It explains how new ideas or technologies spread through the populations. As an application, studying adoption of a new mobile health app across age groups. As the fourth framework, we have Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It is related to social sciences and human behavior. This framework basically explores how a human behavior is driven by fulfilling basic needs to higher level of needs. This is applicable for when researching how workplace motivations affects employee performance. Social cognitive theory is the last framework in the list, and it is related to education and health studies. It basically explores how learning occurs through observation, imitation, and modeling. This framework can be used for studying peer influence on teenagers' screen time habits. As the next topic, we have sampling. So sampling is the process of selecting a subset of individuals or unit from a larger population in order to represent the whole of the entire population that you conducted this research on. This is also a way of ensuring that the research findings are reliable, representative, and also meaningful. The sampling method actually depends on the approach, whether your research is quantitative or the qualitative. Probability sampling technique is the one that is used in quantitative research. In this technique, every member has a probable chance or the equal chance of being selected in order to represent the population. And this approach ensures a statistical representativeness and allows for generalization of results. But in qualitative research, non-probability sampling technique is the one that is most commonly used on focusing on selecting participants who provide in-depth insights to the topic being studied. In this context, the goal is not generalizability, but the understanding of patterns, experiences, and phenomena in detail. As you can see in the table 12, simple random sampling, systematic sampling, stratified sampling, and the cluster sampling are the common methods for probability sampling. In non-probability sampling, convenience, purposive, and snowballs are the common methods. And the next thing you need to know is how to calculate the sample size. So basically, the sample size calculation is the process where you determine how many participants that you're going to need in the study to ensure your results are statistically valid. So there are 4 factors that you have to pay attention to. First one is the confidence level, where you determine how certain you want to be that the results reflect the true populations. We commonly use 95%. And the second factor is margin of error. It's all about the precision. There's the allowable difference between the sample estimation and the true population value. We commonly use 5% of margin of error when calculating the sample size. And the third factor is the population size. So that's referred to the total number of individuals in the group that you're studying. And the fourth one is the estimated proportion, which is the expected prevalence or the probability of characteristics. So this is the basic formula for proportion. If you want to explore the mathematical foundation behind this, I suggest you to try this for yourself. There are many free tools that you can use to calculate your sample size. So in this context, we have chosen SurveyMonkey. You can use this link to access the calculator, and also you can use this guide. So we have an example here. The population is 1,000 students, and the confidence level is 95, and the margin of error is 5%. The result is about 278 students. As you can see in the figure 13, that is the calculator. There are only 3 parameters: the population size, the confidence level you want to go for, and the margin of error. Once you insert the values, it will automatically calculate the sample size for you. And our next topic is research design types. Well, the very first research design type is the experimental design. As a sub-design, we have true experimental design. This is where the researcher manipulates an independent variable, uses a control group, and randomly assigns participants. This design is strongest for establishing cause and effect kind of relationships. For a practical research example, a randomized controlled trial where students are randomly assigned to either use an AI learning app, the treatment group, or the traditional learning method control group to measure the exam performance. The next one is quasi-experimental design. This type is almost similar to true experiments but lacks random assignments, and that is due to the fact that the participants are selected naturally, not based on randomization. For an example, comparing stress levels of 2 existing school classes where one class receives mindfulness training and the other one does not. And the third sub-design is pre-experimental design. It basically involves manipulation but has no control group or randomization. For an example, measuring employee productivity before and after introducing a new work schedule in one office without a comparison group. And the second main research design is the survey research design. As the first sub-design, we have cross-sectional survey. This is a very common application in so many surveys across the world. In this design, data is collected from participants at a single point in time to understand current conditions and opinions. For example, surveying high school students wants to assess their Instagram usage and current sleep quality. And the longitudinal survey is a complete inversion of cross-sectional survey. In this design, data is collected from the same participants over an extended period of time to track the changes. For an example, surveying the same group of students every 6 months for 2 years to study changes in stress levels due to social media usage. The third design is the questionnaire design. So it basically focuses on the digital format and clear wording, unbiased questions, and logical order, as well as the reliability. You can basically use a Google form with the Likert scaled questions to measure customer satisfaction. And the third main design is case study design. It is basically divided into two different sub-designs. The first one we got here is a single case study. It's an in-depth analysis of one individual, organization, or event. This is very useful for when the cases are unique and rare in frequency. For an example, studying how one hospital successfully implemented an AI-based patient monitoring system. And the next sub-design is multiple case study. It involves in the examination of several cases to identify the patterns and the comparisons. For an example, comparing digital transformation strategies of 3 different companies. And the next main research design is correlational design. This design examines the relationship between 2 or more variables without the manipulation. For an example, studying the relationship between hours spent on social media and stress levels among teenagers. It is worth noticing that the correlation does not imply causation. For an example, a positive correlation between coffee intake and the alertness does not prove coffee causes alertness. The common mistakes would be assuming cause and effect and ignoring third variables. For example, assuming poor sleep is caused only by the Instagram use without considering academic stress. And the fifth and the last main research design is a time-based study design. Just like we discussed before, longitudinal study and cross-sectional study. Longitudinal tracks the trends over time, whereas the cross-sectional is specifically focused on a specific time scale at a time. Alright, we have come to the research design flow. This design flow consists of 9 steps. As the first one, identify the research problem. It basically involves in defining the topic, the gap, or the questions you want to explore. For an example, does virtual reality improve engagement in high school biology classes? So that is the identified problem, and you have created a research question, and your study will be focused around it. And the second step is reviewing literature and conceptual framework. This is where you examine existing studies to refine the problem you have identified in the previous step, and read, analyze, and produce the literature review and identify the variables to produce the conceptual framework. For an example, review papers on VR in education, engagement metrics, and cognitive load. Right after that, they build the literature review and conceptual framework with the involved variables. And the third step is to define objectives and hypotheses. This step is basically allocated for specifying research aims and formulate testable hypotheses. For an example, an objective would be measure the effect of VR on student engagement, whereas the hypothesis would be VR increases engagement compared to traditional methods. And the fourth step is to choose research design type. You basically decide on the approach, whether it could be qualitative or quantitative or both, which means the mixed methods integration. For an example, you could use a quantitative research design and control experiment comparing VR versus regular teaching. And the fifth step is select sampling methods and participants, where you determine the target population and sampling techniques. For an example, you use random sampling techniques against 60 high school students. And the sixth step is data collection methods, where you decide how to gather data through surveys, observations, experiments, interviews, etc. For an example, engagement measured via survey and observation checklist. And the seventh step is dedicated for data analysis plan. So you should plan statistical or qualitative analysis to answer each question in your study. As a research example, use of t-tests to compare engagement scores between groups. And the 8th step is the ethical considerations, where you have to ensure participants' protection, informed consent, and the confidentiality. For an example, obtaining consent forms, anonymize responses, and follow school ethics protocols. And the 9th and the last step is the interpretation and reporting process. So this is where you present your result to the world and discuss findings in relation to the objectives and the literature. For an example, you can discuss increased VR engagement compared with previous studies and highlight the limitations. Alright, we have come to the end of our second video tutorial in this series. In this tutorial, you basically learn how to conduct literature reviews and how to manage citations from multiple sources. And lastly, in chapter 7, how to design your research. In the next video tutorial, I'm going to be walking you through the data collection and analysis process and how to conduct quantitative and qualitative data collection as well as the data analysis on them. So subscribe to our XIVIX University channel and turn on the notification bell so you will be notified when we post our next video tutorial in the series.